Hi, this is Jack Downs with a lecture about story ideas. Sorry I can't be in class today. Thanks for watching the video. As you watch, at a few different occasions, I'm going to be giving some questions that I need you to write the answers to and email me. Just my way of ensuring you actually watch this video now that I took the trouble to make it. First of all, I want to apologize for looking hot and sweaty. It's very warm in my office right now, and I had to turn off the fan to make this video. I also have some notes I'm going to be reading from. I apologize for that. And I got some housekeeping to take care of right at the beginning. Next class, so you're watching this as if the class is Thursday. So Tuesday's class is scheduled to be a story idea field trip. Class is not going to meet in our normal classroom. Class is going to meet on the steps of the public library downtown. That's at the intersection of Brinkerhoff and Oak Streets. Attendance is mandatory. I'll be taking attendance. Class will start 10 minutes late, and it will get done 10 minutes early to allow transportation. It's not a long walk. If you Google it, intersection of Brinkerhoff and Oak Streets, the Plattsburgh Public Library, you'll see that it's not very far. Easy to get to. Hey, you're learning to be reporters. I'll let you find it yourself. I'm not going to give you intricate directions in a map. I encourage you, if you have a car and you're driving, to perhaps offer rides to other students. And what are you going to do there? Well, it'll be a surprise. Let's wait and see when you get there. I'll send an email reminder, and if because of inclement weather I have to change the schedule, I will send email about that also. So watch your email for a reminder for the field trip, and then perhaps postponement if that happens. Okay, so about story ideas. Where do story ideas come from? Well, there's lots of different places they come from. For me, I think some of the best story ideas just come from your life around you. Staying curious and open to ideas, things that you overhear people talking about while you're waiting in line for something, things that become popular on Facebook or Twitter, which are great tools for story ideas. Maybe you're at dinner and you overhear a conversation. Maybe you're walking down the street and you see a poster on a telephone pole. There's actually story ideas all around us. The problem is we are so busy in our lives that things tend to just sort of flow past us. During the story idea scavenger hunt, which is the field trip, you'll be able to open yourself up to some story ideas and hopefully see them around you. Coming up with story ideas is a great exercise in its own, and it's something that reporters have to train themselves to do. Reporters develop a file, usually a notebook. Some people call it a tickler file of story ideas, stories they haven't gotten to, stories they think of. And as reporters in any medium, TV, magazines, newspapers, as they continue with their careers, they usually develop long lists of stories, and coming up with story ideas becomes much easier, especially for beat reporters. More about that in a minute. But what about staying open to story ideas and finding them? It's not unlike coming up with other ideas in your life. And I'm going to play you a little piece now from an interview with Stephen Wright. He's a comedian. He's known for his incredible comedy writing techniques and his ability to come up with off-the-wall ideas for comedy. And this is an interview with a Canadian broadcaster called JOU308 on the Q show. I hope you enjoy it.
Thanks. When I was a little kid, I wish the first words I ever said was the word quote, so right before I died, it could say unquote. Lots of my friends have babies, but I don't have any babies, but I have lots of friends. Babies don't have any friends. They all have those baby monitors so they can hear the baby from the other room, which I consider a form of wiretapping. I need one of those baby monitors from my subconscious to my consciousness so I can know what the hell I'm really thinking about.
How do the jokes come to you, Stephen? I mean, it's incredibly funny observational stuff that comes out of your mind. How do you actually achieve those moments? Is it cerebral, or does it come to you?
In the very beginning, I sat down and I tried to write jokes for about probably the first 10 or 10 months, maybe a year. Then after that, my mind just started scanning the information in daily life, and the jokes would just jump out to me. Like from the minute anyone wakes up to when you go to sleep, you're bombarded by fragments of pieces of information, and something in a conversation, something you read, a sign you see, or it's all these fragments of information, and some of them to me can be twisted into jokes. So my subconscious is always searching for it, and so it appears to be out of the blue, but it really isn't. But I'm just bouncing off everyday occurrences in life. I'm just like reacting to some of it. Not all of it, just some of it.
Okay, I hope you enjoyed that. Stephen Wright, by the way, that was a radio broadcast which explains the stills. He talked about having a baby monitor to your subconscious. If you could do that, that would be a fantastic way to get story ideas, because you actually subconsciously observe all kinds of things that should make you curious, but tend to ignore them throughout the day because so much is going on. The way he comes up with jokes, just letting the world flow over you and seeing the curious things in it, is the way you can come up with story ideas. However, there's other ways to come up with story ideas too. And honestly, a professional reporter probably comes up with most of his story ideas by working a beat. A beat is a topic area. Traditional beats would be health, health and fitness perhaps, cops and courts, politics, business, sports. In fact, beats may be very fine-tuned. In sports, your beat may just be baseball, especially at larger publications where you get very specialized. So what is it about a beat that helps you with story ideas? And how can that help you as a student journalist? Well, when you first start a beat, it's not easy to get story ideas. In the very beginning, as a rookie reporter, you don't know many people. You don't have the connections. But your first job is to meet as many people on your beat. That means connected to your topic area. It might mean going to all kinds of meetings that won't even generate stories, introducing yourself to all kinds of people, going to events, just talking, meeting everybody involved at all sides of the topic that may be yours. You're letting them see you, hopefully gain confidence in you, becoming aware of who you are. You're getting on mailing lists for news releases. You're developing contacts. You're staying in touch with them. This process builds into some great story ideas. In fact, in the end, probably so many story ideas you can't do them all. And at the same time, you get the sources to bounce story ideas off from to find out, is what you're hearing really the case, or is there something more to it? Now, you may say, oh, well, that's interesting, but what good is that going to be to you as a student journalist? Well, even as a student journalist, even in a one-semester class, you can still do something like taking on a beat. Let's take some examples. I'm going to show you some websites and talk briefly about how you might use them to start to pursue story ideas as a beat reporter would. Okay, so the question is, how can you use some beat techniques to develop stories as a student journalist, even in a one-semester class? Let's imagine, first of all, that you're on the health beat. Well, the hospital in Plattsburgh is CVPH Medical Center. There's other hospitals in the area you could do something similar with, and other medical organizations for that matter. First of all, if I were doing the health beat, I would check out CVPH on Facebook and Twitter. You can see that they have links there, and I would certainly watch their postings there and get some information there, I'm sure. They also have a YouTube channel, which I've not checked out. You may want to look at that. But what you want to know is, you want to know what news do they have, right? Now, they have on their front page some information. However, what I would look for is like a news and events link, like as is up here. I'm going to click on that. So what do I see here? News and events. I see press releases. The same press releases that are going out to media everywhere are right here. In fact, I see some pretty recent too. Many blood drives planned in September. Well, that could be really interesting. Um, Blood drives, people who go to a lot of blood drives, people who make a life of donating blood, could be a feature story. The status of the blood supply here, which is actually quite good. And issues about how many people get helped by each pint of blood. There's be a number of stories involving that. CVPH welcomes 3 new physicians. That sounds interesting. Areas like this are always having trouble recruiting physicians, and there's 3 new physicians. There's scholarships. I'm not sure about that. There's a health insurance open house. Going to something like that. These are mostly past. I'm not sure when that thing is happening. You click on it and see. Going to something like that kind of an open house, and there's other events we can look at. They have the benefit of you'd meet people, and who knows what story you'd find. You know, just go to something like that, a health insurance open house. Let's click on events now. This is even more interesting. I see that in September 2nd, which is today, by the way, there's a grief support group. And I click on the details, what the grief support group is, when it meets, a phone number, and an email. Now, I wouldn't just go to something like that, especially a support group, without talking to someone first. But you can imagine, with the right care taken, talking to the facilitator, and then maybe there'd be a couple of people who would want to talk to you. You wouldn't barge in. You don't have a right to be there. It's not a public right to know. But yet there could be incredible stories, incredible personal stories, and stories that could help people too about how to deal with grief of different kinds. That would be one example. So I would treat this page like learning my beat. If I was learning a beat, I would, but you're doing the same thing. I can find many other events here. Many of them are blood drives, but there are other things too. Man-to-man prostate education and support group. Maybe I should go to that. In any case, it could be an interesting health story that would there actually be a story from the support group? Maybe not. But maybe learning about the issue would help you to write a story about it. It goes on and on. So you can also look at publications. I haven't looked at this before. These look a little bit stale. There's an annual report there. You never know what you find in an annual report. There could be all kinds of information there. So if you wanted to do something with a doctor, for instance, you could try calling their office, but medical sources can be really tough. They can be very busy. And you can't just walk into the hospital necessarily and just do a story on anybody you find. I would say you should really talk to somebody in public relations there, especially if you want to talk to some of their staff. So I go to their phone list and you can see public relations. Off the top of my head, I think the public relations staff has changed recently, so I don't know the name, but I'm sure you'd get in touch with them. You could do the same sort of thing with other health organizations. Go to their websites, read their news releases, look for meetings, watch them on Facebook and Twitter, and start to feel like you're part of that community. Go to events, and all of a sudden you get a story as if you're on that beat. Now let's look at another one. Okay, we've covered a lot of ground. I said I was going to give you some questions I wanted you to email me the answers of. I don't think I've done any yet, right? Okay, so first of all, I want you to email me, answer to this question. What is the name of the comedian who we heard the little piece from? And tell me how old he is and where he's from. I didn't tell you that, but I'm sure the Wikipedia can tell you. That's one question. Next one is, I want you to go to one of those websites that I mentioned, CVPH, Chamber of Commerce, Arts Council, Rhoda. Go to one of those, and looking through the information there, give me one story idea. This doesn't have to be an elaborate story idea like a true pitch. It can just be something briefer, just like one sentence. I think I could do a story about whatever, and I found it on such and such a website. Okay, so now I may give you another question when we get near the end also. So we've gone through a number of techniques. Now what about getting story ideas from other media in the area? I'm going to show you some websites, and this is going to be also from the handout that you're getting. So we'll we'll take a look at some other media organizations' websites and how you might use those. Okay, here's the handout that I've given you, where the story ideas come from. I suggest that in your text there are some pages. The page numbers may not relate exactly depending on which edition you have, but they're roughly that area. There are some very good suggestions for coming up with story ideas. The morgue is the area of the book, at the back of the book, the brown pages, which have some award-winning stories, some very good stories. Looking through other people's stories, really good stories, you'll get story ideas. And in your text in the webbibliography, there's some suggestions for places to go to find story ideas. I wanted to suggest that being involved with local media, watching local news, listening to local news on the radio, reading the newspaper, those are the things that are going to give you story ideas. You might say, well, those already were stories. I can't do those again, but yes, you can. You can do them in your own way. I'm sure there's different approaches, there was unanswered questions, there's follow-ups, so you can use other media to help you come up with story ideas. Here are some of the sites I suggest. The Press Republican. Think about the Press Republican. Remember, I told you that it's now gone to a subscription paywall. You're going to have to start reading it anyway, so maybe start now and paying for it, I'm afraid, or finding some place to read it for free. There is not, unfortunately, a very good calendar of events here. So that's one issue with the site that would make it better for you. But reading the paper online or on print is going to help you come up with story ideas. Another one is North Country Public Radio. This is a fantastic resource. A couple of reasons. North Country Public Radio is one of actually 3 large public radio stations with broadcast in the area, but this is the most hometown one, really. Because their stuff is radio-based, it's easier, I think, to come up with your own take on it. Yet they do a lot of local news, unlike some radio. They have a very good calendar also, calendar of events. It's a very intelligent news source. So I think there's some possibility here. Remember, you can go back through, in any of these news sources, months and months and months of old stories. And doing that, you may come across something that you never heard of because you've only been in Plattsburgh for a short while, but you could work into a good story. And I think I suggest WPTZ, which is the local television station. Unfortunately, they also do a lot of Vermont news, which is one of the wraps on them. So I think you'll find some stories here, and it's worthwhile looking at, but without prior approval, I don't want you going over to Vermont to do stories. But you never know, if a story is big there, it's probably a way to do it here. And apparently they want a QuickTime Player run. This is Den Pubs, which is the Berg, which is a free weekly newspaper in the area. Another online and on-paper news source. They do have a good calendar of events, which you might want to take a look at. I haven't looked at it in a while, actually. Events, yoga class. There could be stories there. Support group, North Country Singers. I don't know what they are. Bingo. Hey, you can go to Bingo and find a story. So you can find lots of stories in places like that. Let's look back at the handout. On the web, here are the Al's Morning Meetings archive are a good source. And some pointer links to Pointer Institute. This is one of the links. I think this is one of the ones I give you. Or you just go to Pointer Institute and search story ideas, which is how I found this one. Pointer Institute is a fantastic source for journalism education. And Al's Morning Meeting, which there's a link to, including his archives, he sort of stopped doing the daily story idea thing that he used to. But here's the archives. Even though they're old, the story ideas are still, many of them are usable. So there's the handout on some story ideas. Okay, we're nearing the end now. The last of the things I want you to email me are, I want you to go through some of those Pointer Institute links, or just go to Pointer Institute and search story ideas, and come up with some interesting story idea from there. It doesn't have to be a specific one, or it could just be something you learn about story ideas, and include that. So I've asked you to give me Stephen Wright information, something like a short story idea from one of those websites, and then something like a short story idea or an interesting fact about story ideas or suggestion about story ideas from a Pointer Institute website. Package those things together and email it to me. Why don't you call it Thursday video class, something like that. And you've got my email. Okay, so now I want to tell you about, so what you think once you have the story idea and once you're going to do the interview, is the story idea done? You know, once the interview starts, is that the end of it? No, it isn't. Staying curious about the story while the interview is going on and being ready for the unexpected is a very useful technique. In your text, for instance, the unexpected, how to react to the unexpected, one reporter talks about reading a story about the post office, about alligators or crocodiles chewing through a box at the post office. What did he think to do? He thought to go to the post office and get the regulations on what you can mail and what you can't mail. And that made an interesting story. Just like a guy looking at his old baseball glove, wondered, where did baseball gloves come from? What was their evolution? That came out an interesting story. Just like a photographer, or someone looking at a photograph of the Northwestern University's championship lacrosse team meeting with the president and realized that they were all wearing flip-flops and said, wearing flip-flops to the White House. That turned into an interesting story. More than that, I remember a reporter talking about doing a story about a person who has just become homeless, meeting them in a McDonald's and talking about their plate and so on. And this woman carried a bag with her. And before the interview was over, he thought to ask, what's in the bag? And the things a person who just became homeless chose to carry around with them told so much about her. Another example would be you sit down to an interview and the subject has a cast on their arm, but that has nothing to do with the story, right? You do the interview. Don't forget to ask, what happened? Why do you have a cast on your arm? So stay open to the unexpected. And finally, we're going to have one more thing. Oh yes, I have to tell you about how to pitch a story and what a story pitch is made of. Okay, to finish up. So once you have a story idea, what do you do about it? Well, first of all, I'm going to be giving you a copy of this, but remember, the first two pitches are due Thursday, September 12th, and that will be 1 week from the class which I'm making this video for. So you got to get some story ideas pretty soon. You should be writing down the story ideas whenever you have them. Keep a notebook or in some way just record them to keep track so you don't lose any. And also on Tuesday, our field trip will be help also. But in the meantime, using these sources and any other source you can think of, you'll come up with story ideas. The first two being due that Thursday the 12th, and then a week later more, and then a week later more, so a lot of story ideas in a short period of time. With your first story actually being due on Tuesday, October 1st. Remember, we're talking about one event story, one personality profile news feature, 3 stories from these 2 other categories, issue-based news story and localized news feature. In some ways, the event story, because you only have to have a minimum of 2 sources, same with the profile. In some ways, those are easier. It's good to maybe get one of those out of the way right away. On the other hand, maybe set one of those up and be working on one of these harder, longer stories involving more sources in the meantime to see which comes through. And there's more information here, which we went over before, and we'll go over again about the stories and what's required. Missed deadlines, formatting, source documentation, length, double dipping, I'll explain, and extra credit also. Okay, so here's a handout you're going to have, and we'll go over a number of times. But what about the story idea itself? What do you do? Well, I have this story pitch form, essentially. This is a Word document I'll put on Moodle. However, It's not magic. You don't have to use that Word document. You can just type up your own, as long as it covers these categories. What I don't want, of course, I don't want a handwritten, scribbled note about a story idea, but I don't want you to hand me just one sentence that says, I want to do a story about such and such. A pitch is a developed story idea. And in fact, you need to have enough development that you'll be able to explain and advocate for this story idea in class, because you will be pitching your stories to the other students in class. A pitch, in my opinion, ought to have a name and ought to have a beat. What beat is this story on? It ought to have a story type. Already it should categorize a story and what story type it is. And remember, if it's a profile and you've already done a profile, you better come up with a different type of story idea. Give it a working title or headline. Focusing yourself to come up with a working title or headline for the story at the very beginning can help you to really further develop that story idea, and focus is always good. Idea summary, just a paragraph is fine. What's the story about? Just tell me what the story is about. Interview subjects. Hopefully these are specific people recorded by name and title, exactly who you're going to talk to. That will get you a long ways. You may have to have more general ideas, like I'm going to talk to a person who would know about such and such a thing. I'm going to talk to a bureaucrat in such and such an office. I'm going to find somebody who's affected by this story. They're probably this kind of person. So identify the interview subjects as specifically as you can. Hopefully they're specific. Don't be afraid to make a few calls, even at the pitch stage, to see, is this story doable? Are there sources I can use? And remember the minimum sources, and hopefully and often more than the minimum number of sources. And also remember, this must not be a college-only story read about college students for college students. Think about it as for a general interest publication, community news publication. List other resources you might use. Maybe there's documents or reports or online sources that you might use. Remember, those don't replace the other sources, but it's fine to list them. Possible problems. It's good to anticipate problems right at the beginning. And where'd you get the idea from? Put those things together, type them up, you got a pitch. We're doing these probably 2 at a time, so you're going to be handing me 2 of those in September 12th. And we'll talk about them in class, so be ready to talk about them. Okay, to wrap up. I'll tell you this in class, but you're on the street, which was theoretically due the day that you're hearing this. I'm giving you a 1-day extension, and you're going to be dropping it off, the hard copy version of it, at my office. There'll be a folder on my door or near my door on the bulletin board for you to put it in. So I'm going to need you to. I am going to need you to turn in on the street. You can turn it in when it's due date if you wish, or till 9 a.m. on Friday at my office. That's 231 Ward, and you'll see an envelope there to put it in. Don't forget also, of course, to put it on Moodle. You're supposed to put a Word document there too. That's just a backup copy. So there's that. You should still look at the Moodle schedule and remind yourself that, imagine that this is Thursday's class time, that before next class, I want you to read chapters 4 and 5 in our textbook. So read 4 and 5. And after a little while, of course, there's going to be a take-home quiz on that too, and 6 at that point. I've asked you to send me an email to prove to me that you've watched this video. Don't make it elaborate, okay? Just the information about the comedian, the information about looking at those websites, and did you find a little story idea? Don't write a whole pitch, just a very brief idea, and then go look at the Pointer Institute website and find me something about story ideas. Again, a sentence or 2 is fine. Don't make it elaborate. Just send me that email. And what else do I want to say? Your pitches are due. The first set of pitches are going to be due on the 12th. And remember our next class, the Tuesday class, which is on the 10th, Tuesday the 10th, right? Yeah. That's going to be which is the class following the one where you're watching this video, theoretically. That's the class where we have the scavenger hunt downtown. Meet at the library at class time or 10 minutes after. Class will start a little later than usual down there. Watch for email reminder and an email if we have to change it because of the weather. I will be checking my email if you have questions or problems regarding any of this, and we'll stay in touch, and I'll see you later.